Okay, hello and good morning. Thank you for joining me at this session. In this session, so today we'll be talking about Frederick, the valorization of the foreign. So we started our discussion last time, but today we will finish it. We'll finish our discussion about it, and also we'll try to start some of the new theories that we have in this lecture. So now, in our last lecture, we talked about this, but I'll just recapitulate so that you can understand some of the things, and those who have missed the lecture, they'll also find it useful. So as you can see in the slide, you can see it. I'm going to read it for you. It says that while the 17th century had been about imitation and the 18th century about the translator's duty to recreate the spirit of the source text for the reader of the time, the German romantics of the early 19th century, including monumental figures such as Goethe, Humboldt, and Novalis, Schlegel, discuss the issues of translatability and untranslatability and the mythical nature of translation. So we have seen that in our previous discussion, we talked about the fidelity of the translation. We talked about the spirit of the translation. We talked about the truth of the translation. And also we had discussion about sense for sense translation. And also, that is, also we talked about word for word translation, which is, what is another name for word translation? Do you remember that? We have one metaphrase, another one is?
Paraphrase.
Exactly. So metaphrase is the word for word and paraphrase is the sense for sense translation. There is another one we also talked about, that is imitation, right?
Correct, sir. Adaptation.
Exactly. If I ask you the question, can you tell me who introduced this classification? Who introduced this classification of translation? What's his name? A famous English poet. Just to give it to you. So what's his name?
Sir, Dryden.
Exactly. John Dryden. Actually, he introduced these three different types of translation. That is metaphrase, paraphrase, and imitation. So you can see all of them. They're talking about from the translator's perspective. But really, actually, we can see that what's the reader will think about the translation.
Yes,
so
sir.
They didn't talk about it, or they didn't discuss it in that much. So there lies the question, that the issues of translatability and also the untranslatability, whether it is you can translate it or whether you cannot translate it. So we discuss all these factors. Now, in 1813, the theologian and translator Frederick wrote a highly influential treatise on translation, and the name of that treatise or name of that article is On the Different Methods of Translating. There, he recognized as and you see he's been recognized as the founder of Protestant theology and modern hermeneutics. I told you that hermeneutics means that is the study of interpretation or interpreting different texts, especially the religious texts, and also, related with theology, and also texts that are related with, you can see the history and also academic texts. These are the texts or literary texts, how actually we can interpret them. So those techniques are discussed in hermeneutics. So it's all about interpretation, the way actually you interpret the text. It's all about that. And it's a kind of romantic approach, it says that, because it's not only about the absolute truth, it's about the individual's inner feeling and understanding. That's how an individual, that means a translator, as an individual, how he sees translation, how he considers translation. So that's the point here. So you can see that the individual approaches to the translation, it has been emphasized here, that how a translator will consider his work. It's not only all the time, it's about descriptive, or rather, no, not descriptive. It's not about prescriptive, you prescribe and then accordingly you will translate. It's not like that. Also, you can have your own approach. At the same time, the participation of both the reader and the author, the author of the original text or the source text. So there actually, how can we establish a kind of rapport? How can we establish a kind of communion, a kind of communication or understanding between the author of the source text and the target text, a reader of the target text. So that is actually what we are going to learn about from Frederick's discussion. Now, Frederick, for our understanding, he says that the translator actually usually, they will translate, or usually as a translator will translate two different kinds of texts. One is who translate, that is, you can say, that is it's in German language, so I don't know how to pronounce it, but here you see the commercial text, translators who translate commercial text. That means one is commercial text, another one is scholarly and artistic text. So these two different kinds of text, and a translator will usually actually we find these kind of text and we translate those. So commercial text, I gave you examples in our in another lecture, in the last lecture, I told you that commercial text means like pamphlet, booklet. These things are useful for the commercial purposes. So we also need to translate those texts so that the user, for example, if there is a new product, and if that product actually has been from German, and you can see that if the booklet is written in German, and if it is imported to Bangladesh from German to Bangladesh, I mean, if Bangladesh, imports these kind of products from German, and you see that we don't speak German, so as a result, people will not understand the manual. So it will be translated from German to Bengali or Bangla, so that people can understand it. So this kind of translation are completely for commercial purposes. So we call them commercial texts. And it's called an artistic text that we can see in our schools and colleges and also in academic arenas. We have lots of texts. Those texts are from different other languages, and they needed to be translated from that source text to target text, so that the audience of the target text or readers of the target text, they can understand it. So these are scholarly and artistic texts that we can talk about. For example, I gave you this example in another location. You can see that Jivanandu Das and his poems are translated by Professor Dr. Fakhrul Alam from Dhaka University, and he translated those. And also he translated Rabindranath Tagore's different works. And he is a very good translator, especially from Bangladesh perspective. He is one of the renowned translators and who has a reputation as a translator here and abroad. So those are artistic or scholarly kind of translation texts, and those are translated into our language. So I hope that you can understand the bifurcation between these two different kinds of text, that is commercial text and scholarly and artistic texts. Now, he says that this second type, scholarly and artistic text, actually, you need to be very much creative if you really want to translate them, because those works are creative. So as a result, if you really want to translate them, also you need to be very creative, and it's a creative work. It's like creating something new, because commercial text, you don't have to use your creativity. You just translate it as it is, word for word translation is okay, because there is no underlying meaning. Especially in the manual, we find instruction, right? What do we find in the manual? Do we see in the manual or user guide that call? Do we find in the user guide poems or short stories? Do you find these things there in the user guide? ব্যবহার বিধির যে বইগুলো থাকে, ফ্রিজ কিনতে গেলে কিংবা মাইক্রোওয়েভ ওভেন কিনলে আমাদের যে ম্যানুয়াল দেওয়া হয় কিংবা যে ইউজার গাইড দেওয়া হয়, সেখানে কি কবিতা থাকে, ছোট গল্প থাকে? Hello?
No, sir.
So you see, these are just manual, and most of the so they're instructions. Okay, so those are instructions. So what we can do, especially when it is instruction, and also when they are, you can say, and most of them, those are written in, you can say, imperative sentence. Okay, that's like instruction. So that's why we don't have to go for sense translation. They must be exact. Otherwise, people might get the wrong notion, and they can confuse while there is a new product. So it might create problem for the users. So that's why user guides and also the manuals, we actually keep them word for word translation. Just the word for word translation, we use it. Okay. So as I was saying, that the second type, that literary text or the artistic text, they need creativity. You need to be very creative if you really want to translate those kind of texts. Now, here it says, although it may seem impossible to translate scholarly and artistic text, since the source text meaning is couched in language that is very culture bound, and to which the target language can never fully correspond, the real question, according to Frederick, is how to bring the source text writer and the target text reader together. So who moves beyond the issues of word for word and sense for sense, literal, faithful, and free translation, and considers there to be only two paths open for the true translator. Now here he's saying that since artistic or literary texts, they're very difficult to translate because of their style, the use of language, diction, and also style. That means syntactically they're different from the source text or source language and the target language. For example, German and Bangla, they're two different languages. So the source text German and the target text Bangla, that means source language German and target language Bangla, they're completely two different languages. And as a result, we will find that, this is very difficult to, you can say, to transfer all the linguistic and the stylistic features or rhetorical features of the source text, that means the German, I mean, from that language, these rhetorical devices and also the stylistic features, it's difficult to transfer for those things from the source language to target language, that's in Bangla. Because in Bangla, we have different kinds of style, different sentence structure, different kinds of rhetoric. In German, we have different kinds of style and sentence structure, and semantically, syntactically, they're different. So as a result, sometimes it's really difficult to transfer all those things from the source text to the target text. So that's why it's never fully correspond. Never fully correspond, because that means you will never be able to transfer those things in the source text, exactly all those things that we have in the source text in the target text. It's not possible. It's difficult. So that's why he's saying, I mean, Friedrich was thinking that since it is impossible to transfer all the things that is available in the target text, in the source text, it is impossible all the things to transfer things in the source text from the target text. So how can we come to a compromise? How can we do it in a better way so that both the reader of the target text and also the author of the original text, they will be given the same importance and they will understand each other. So a kind of communication between the original writer of the source text and the readers of the target text or target language. So he wanted to bridge the gap between these two, because both of them, they are the stakeholders in these works of translation. Because one will, I mean, the author of the source text, he will be understood, he will be apprehended, or yes, he will be apprehended or understood by the readers of the target text. So we need to have a good communication between these two. So that's why he's saying that he moves beyond the issue of word for word. So he didn't go for the word for word translation, or even he didn't go for altogether for the sense for sense translation, or literal or faithful or free translation. So he's considering two different paths just to bridge the gap between the reader of the source text and the readers of the target text. And what are those? Here he says, either the translator leaves the writer in peace as much as possible and moves the reader towards him, or he leaves the reader in peace as much as possible and moves the writer towards him. So either he will translate, I mean the translator, he will translate the piece or the source text in such a way that he will take the writer of the source text to the reader, or he will take the reader to the writer of the source text. That means he will bridge the gap. Neither he will exactly translate the source text, and in doing so, I mean, you can see that it might be the readers of the source, I mean, target text, they may get the wrong notion of the original text. So in that sense, they will not get the real idea about the author or the writer of the original text, then what kind of writer actually he is. So they will fail to understand it, or they will fail to judge him, to evaluate him. So, okay, so that's why he is thinking that either he will translate in the source target language in such a way that the readers of the target language, they will understand, they will have a better understanding about the source text, author of the source text, or he will translate from the author's perspective in the target language in such a way that he will take the author to the readers of the target text. So you can see it's very much participatory. So in both the parties, the stakeholders of this translation game, the reader and the readers of the target text and the writer of the source text, so both of them, they will get the same benefit, same share in the whole translation process. Now, Friedrich preferred his strategy is the first. Preferred his strategy is the first, moving the reader towards the writer. So he actually preferred this one, that moving the reader towards the writer. So he preferred this. That means he will translate the source text in such a way that he will take the readers to the source text, the writer of the source text. So in thus actually they will have a rapport or communication. Now he's saying this entails not writing as the author would have done had he written in German, but rather giving the reader through the translation the impression he would have received as a German reading the work of the original language. So you see, giving the reader through the translation the impression he would have received as a German reading the work in the original language. So he says that the translator's duty will be such that he will translate it's from the writer's perspective But you see, the taste of the writing as the author would have done had he written in German. So if the way actually he would written in German, so he'll just imagine that. But rather the reader, through the translation, the impression he would have received as a German reading the work in the original language. So he will translate it very close to the original. So he will maintain both the word for word and sense for sense and free translation, all these kinds of theories, put them together in such a way that when the readers will read it, they will get the feeling of reading it in the original German language. So even if they are reading in Bangla, but they will feel that they are reading it in the German language, the original, just like the original text. To achieve this, the translator must adopt an alienating, as opposed to naturalizing method of translation, orienting himself or herself by the language and content of the source text. So here, to achieve this, the translator must adopt an alienating. That means he will alienate. This is the method of translation. He will separate himself, orienting himself or herself by the language. So he will orient himself or herself by the language. So he will be very much close or oriented to the language and content of the source text. So he will know the language of the source text. He will also have a better understanding of the source text, the context, the main idea, gist, the essence of the source text. So the language and the essence of the source text, the content of the source text. So he must have a good knowledge. I mean, we're talking about the translator. He or she must valorize the foreign and transfer that into the target language. So he will transfer those elements, the linguistic feature, the rhetorical feature, and also the stylistic feature of that particular language or the genre of that particular literature of any text. So he will transfer all those qualities into the target language. That means he will have a very good understanding of the German, for example, and then from German he will try to get all the stylistic, he will try to adopt all the stylistic features and also the rhetorical features, and many more other stuff that are found in the German, and he will transfer all those qualities to his native language, native tongue, or you can say the target language. So this actually he will do. So in that sense, he is alienating from his own language, and also he's alienating himself from the German. So in between, he will act just like a mediator between two different languages. So there is a separation or alienation, and then he will transfer all those qualities found in the source text, he'll transfer those in the target text. So that's actually said that he will valorize. That means he will give more importance of, you can say, he will, that means he will promote the foreign, that means the other elements found in the source text. So he will take those foreign elements and he'll keep them foreign, but he'll put them in his own tongue. So this is his duty as a translator. Okay, up to this, if you have any question, I would like to answer those. Dear students, do you have any question?
No, sir.
Okay, if there is any difficulty or you haven't understood, so you can tell me. I'll repeat it. Fine. Ritu, is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's great. Then, if you don't have any question or observation, then I'll move on to the next slide. Now here, there are several consequences of this approach, including if the translator is to seek to communicate the same impression which he or she received from the source text, this impression will also depend on the level of education and understanding among the target text readership. And this is likely to differ from the translator's own understanding. Now here you see, he is giving importance on the readers. But earlier, in the 19th and in the early 20th century, we have seen that all the theories, they focus only on the translation process theories and also on the translator. But rarely you can find that those theories really they emphasize or really they gave importance, on the reader's understanding. But here you see the readership and the reader's understanding, it has become an important factor for a good translation work. That's why he's saying that if the translator is to seek to communicate the same impression which he or she received from the source text, this impression will also depend on the level of education and understanding among the target text readership. That means it's not only about the translator himself. I might be a good translator, but I have to consider at the same time that whether my readers, they are good at understanding those things, whether they can understand. That means if they don't have a good education background, then it will be difficult for the readers to understand the text. Because firstly, you are transferring all the qualities that are found in the source text, to the target text. So if the reader is not well educated, if they are not well informed about this translation thing, they might not get the original idea of the source text. So that's why he's saying that the readership or the reader's education matters. Reader's education matters for better translation work, especially for understanding. So they're thinking about the consequences. It's not all about that we will translate and we'll leave it as it is and will not consider the readers. Because ultimately, we are translating our works from one language, from source text to target text. What's the reason? What's the basic reason or the main reason of translating from the source text to the target text? Can you tell me? Why actually are we translating? Why are we translating from source text to target text? What is the reason? Is it all the time? Is it all about money all the time?
No, sir.
No, sir. To understand others' culture.
Yes, I want my readers to understand that text, to take the
Sir,
text.
others' main thought.
Okay, that means I want that, for example, a particular book, it has been published recently and it has become very popular and people want to read it, but maybe not all our readers, and it's for sure that not all of them, they can read English, right? So we want to have it in translation in our mother tongue. So when you translate it from from English to Bengali, the main purpose is that our Bangladeshi or Bangla readers, they will understand it. They will get the taste of the text, of the original text, the source text, right? That's the only purpose. Money comes later, but firstly, this is the purpose, that we want our readers that they will understand the text which has been written in English or any other language. So readership or the quality of the reader or reader's educational background, and they can also contribute in the translation work, though they're actually you can see that they're in the user end, we can say, because they're using the text and they're getting the idea, though they don't translate, but it's still their feedback, their demand, their desire to understand, or their expectation about the translation work, that also influence the expectation about the translation work, that influence the translator. Maybe in the later translation work or project, he can keep those feedbacks in his mind and he can translate better, right?
Right, sir.
So that's why it's important that we must give importance to the readers, that they are also part of this translation process. But before Frederick, nobody considered you can see the role of the readers. Role of readers in the whole translation process, though they don't translate, but they contribute by their contribute with their opinions, with their views, all these things. So it helps a translator. The second one is spatial language of translation may be necessary. For example, compensating in one place with an imaginative word, where elsewhere the translator has to make do with a hackneyed expression that cannot convey the impression of the foreign. So this is called foreignization. Okay, this is called this kind of way of foreignization. How? I don't know whether actually you have read Alice in the Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Have you read it? Alice in the Wonderland?
No, sir.
Okay, even if you don't read it,
No,
read it.
sir.
Okay, got it. All right. For example, in Alice in the Wonderland, if you go through the text, it's available online, so you can download the PDF if you're interested in. So in Alice in the Wonderland, you can see that there are lots of imaginative words. Those are coined new. We can say neologism, we call it. That means those are neologized, or those words are coined by the writer or the author himself. Before that, those words never existed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And sometimes it may sound like gibberish. It makes no sense,
Yes,
but they sound very funny and interesting. So that's why the author, he coined or imagined those words and he put them in his text. Now, when you take the text from English and if you try to translate it into our mother tongue, that is in Bangla, then you will find it very difficult to translate those imaginative words from English to Bangla. So you can't change them. So in most cases, you will find that we will keep them as it is. Okay?
Okay, sir.
But if you try to translate even those nonsense words or those apparently meaningless words, if you try to translate them, then it may sound, and with a very commonplace expression that we call, in another way you can call it hackneyed expression. So if you try to translate those with this kind of expression, then you will find that it will not convey any impression of the foreign. It will not convey any meaning of the foreign. Because in English, actually, it conveyed a kind of meaning, though they don't have any meaning, but it conveyed a different meaning, a different kinds of impression actually it created on the reader's mind because it was needed. So you cannot, you cannot replace those expressions with your, with your own expressions that are found in your language. And in most cases, that kind of gibberish, you will not find any alternative or corresponding word meaning or expressions in your language. অনেক সময় আমি এখানে একটু বাংলায় বলি তোমাকে যে আমরা এরকম টেক্সট লিখবার সময় ওই টেক্সটে দেখা যায় যে অনেক আননোন ওয়ার্ডস বা বিভিন্ন ধরনের এক্সপ্রেশন আসে, ঠিক আছে? তখন হয় কি যে ওই এক্সপ্রেশনস গুলো আমরা হুবহু ওই ইংরেজিতে জন্য প্রযোজ্য, বাংলায় যদি ওরকম করতে যাই প্রতিশব্দ খুঁজে পাওয়া যাবে না। তো আলটিমেটলি যেটা যদি ওইখানেও ওই যে ইমিটেশন যেটা বলছিলাম অ্যাডাপ্টেশন ব্যাপারটা, যদি ওই স্বাধীনতা না as a translator, you can take that because you're the translator. You have the freedom, you have that freedom to translate it in your own way. But still, if you try to translate those kind of expressions in your language with new kind of expressions, then you can see the sense or the meaning or the impression that was there in the source text, so that is there in the source text, that will be completely lost in the target text. এভাবে করার চেষ্টা করলে তখন আমি নিজের মতো করে আমি ওটাকে অনুবাদের চেষ্টা করছি, আমার ভাষায় আবার আমি নিজের ভাষায় শব্দ বানিয়ে নিলাম ওটার জন্য। তখন যেটা হবে যে ওই অরিজিনাল টেক্সটের যে স্বাদটা, যে ইমপ্রেশনটা ওই অদ্ভুত শব্দ ব্যবহারের কারণে সেটা তুমি বাংলা যখন পড়বো ওটা খুঁজে পাবে, কারণ সেটাকে বাংলাকরণ করে ফেলেছে। দিস ইজ এ কাইন্ড অফ ডোমেস্টিকেশন, নিজের করে ফেলা। বুঝতে পারছো তোমরা আমি কি বলছি? Dear students, do you follow my words, what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me give you an English expression. You'll see that English speakers, when there is something, and if they find it that is completely meaningless, or somebody is saying the same thing again and again and again, then you'll find that they will say blah blah, right? So without repeating the whole thing, they say blah blah. And if you try to find a synonym for this, or if you try to transform that kind of expression into in Bangla, then you'll find that it's meaningless. Because in English, blah blah, it's okay. In Bangla, what do you say? So you try to translate it, then you find that that expression, the impression that it had in the original text, that will be lost in the translation. Got it? Now here you see, Frederick influence has been on us. Indeed, Kittel and Polterman claimed that practically every modern translation theory, at least in the German language area, responds in one way or another to Frederick's hypothesis. So these are Frederick's hypotheses that how actually we have to go for translation. So when you go to European countries, especially those languages which are very close to German, so all the translators of these languages, those are closer to German language. So all these translators from those languages, they were heavily influenced, or you can say they were influenced by these hypotheses made by Frederick. So that's why they're very important, especially in the translation sciences. There appear to have been no fundamentally new approaches. I mean, at that time, we didn't find any other new approaches other than Frederick's hypothesis. Now, the alienating and naturalizing opposites are taken up by venality as foreignization and domestication. So actually, you have to come to know about the word foreignization and domestication, because I mentioned it in summary in one way or another way, and also at the very beginning of today's discussion, valorization of the foreign. So from their foreignization. Foreignization means the alienating process, the alienating idea, of this idea of alienation, or separating the separation of the translation from the, you can say, from the target text. That means he is separating himself from the target text, and he is not replacing the expressions of the visual devices or the stylistic features or syntactic or semantic features of the source text. He's not translating all those things or replacing all those things by his own language or the target language. অর্থাৎ জার্মান ভাষায় ব্যবহৃত ভাষাশৈলী যে বিষয়গুলো আছে, রচনাশৈলী বিষয়গুলো আছে, কিংবা আমরা যেটাকে বলি রিটোরিক্যাল যে ফিচার্স গুলো আছে বা কাব্যিক যে বিষয়গুলো থাকে, এই বিষয়গুলোকে তিনি ট্রান্সফার সরাসরি সেটাকে কি করেন, বাংলাতে ওটাকে বাংলার মতো করে করার চেষ্টা করছেন না। উনি জার্মান বিষয়টাকেই জার্মানির মতো করে রেখে বাংলাতে সেটা তিনি ট্রান্সপ্ল্যান্ট করার চেষ্টা করেন, সেটাকে তিনি ট্রান্সফর্ম করার চেষ্টা করেন। অ্যাজ এ রেজাল্ট যেটা হয়, একটা একটা ফরেন একটা টেস্ট তৈরি হয়। বাট দ্যাট ফরেনাইজেশন অ্যাকচুয়ালি ইজ নট foreign in that sense that that is not understandable by the target text readers. এটা এমন না যে টার্গেট টেক্সট রিডাররা সেটা পড়ে বুঝতেই পারেন না। বুঝতে পারছো কি বলছি? ফরেনাইজেশনের টেকনিকটা এমন যে তিনি এমন ভাবে ওই ভাষার বিষয়গুলোকে তিনি নেবেন, যে নিয়ে তিনি সেটাকে তার নিজের ভাষাতে, মানে অন্য ভাষার যেটা জার্মানি ধরে এক্ষেত্রে প্রথম হিসেবে, সেই জার্মান ভাষার যে টেকনিক গুলো তিনি নিয়ে বাংলাতে এমনভাবে প্রতিস্থাপন করবেন যে বাংলা রিডাররা পড়লে সেই জার্মান ভাষার টেক্সটটা তারা ধরতে পারবে এবং অথর কি বলতে চাইছেন সেটা বুঝতে পারবে। তিনি সম্পূর্ণ ওই ভাষায় লেখা একটা টেক্সটকে তিনি বাংলার মতো করে বাঙালিকরণ করবেন না। আমরা যেটা বলি ডোমেস্টিকেশন, নিজের মতো করে ফেলা, নিজের বানিয়ে ফেলা বা নিজের মতো করে উপযোগী করে তৈরি করা, যাতে আমরা বাংলা ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজের মতো করে ফেলা, সেটা তিনি করছেন না বা সেটা তিনি সাজেস্ট করছেন না। বুঝতে পেরেছো সাদিয়া? সাদিয়া ফাহিম,
Yes, sir.
জি স্যার।
okay,
Yes, sir.
great. Do you have any question after this? So the foundation domestication, this process are Shubhasya, I can't hear you clearly because you're breaking up. Maybe it's because of your network. But in any way, I guess that you have understood. Even if you have,
No, sir.
fine. What is it saying? Can you hear her?
Sir, she said no.
She wants more clarification.
Sir,
Right?
sir, I
Maybe-
understand.
Yes, yes, go on.
Sir,
Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Sir, I have no problem. I can understand. This foreignization, domestication.
For domestication is just the opposite of the foreignization. আমরা foreignization কি করি? অন্য ভাষার এলিমেন্ট গুলোকে নিজের ভাষায় যখন অনুবাদ করার চেষ্টা করছি, আমি সেই হিসাবে প্রিজার্ভ করি, ওটা রেখে দিচ্ছি, কিন্তু এমন ভাবে করি যাতে রিডাররা পড়লে বুঝতে পারে, তারা তখন জার্মান ভাষায় লেখা পড়ছে এরকম একটা টেস্ট তারা পায়, ফিল করে। আর ডোমেস্টিকেশনটা হচ্ছে ঠিক ফরেনাইজেশনের উল্টোটা। তো আমাদের সামনে আমরা যে বইটা ফলো করছি, যে বইটা আমরা ফলো করছি, সেই বইয়ের যে 9 নম্বর চ্যাপ্টার, সেই চ্যাপ্টারটাতে ফরেনাইজেশন এন্ড ডোমেস্টিকেশনের বিষয়টা আর বিস্তারিত আলোচনা আছে, এন্ড ইটস অলসো গোইং টু বি পার্ট অফ আওয়ার লেকচারস টু। সো আমরা এটা নিয়ে পরবর্তীতে আলোচনা করব, কারণ যে মানডে বই আমরা এটা পেয়েছি, তো এটা নিয়ে আমরা পরবর্তীতে আলোচনা করব। সো আরো বিস্তারিত আলোচনা আসবে শুধু ফরেনাইজেশন ডোমেস্টিকেশন। সো এটা নিড টু ওয়ারি অ্যাবাউট ইট। ওকে, আমরা বেসিক আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং এর জন্য আজকে এই লেকচারের জন্য এটুকু যথেষ্ট। Now I will move on. Additionally, the vision of a language of translation is pursued by Walter Benjamin, and the description of the hermeneutics of translation is apparent in George Steiner's hermeneutic motion. So you see, the hermeneutics, or you can say the style or the art of translation, or the knowledge of interpretation, how to interpret a text, how to analyze a text. So this analytical ability, or you can say that your expertise as an interpreter, that will help you to be a good translator. So that's why you're saying the language of translation is pursued by Walter Benjamin. So Walter Benjamin and George Steiners in their hermeneutics of translation, they try to explain that what could be the language of translation. Also, you find it in the chapter 10 of the same book. Now, we are done with physics hypothesis. Now we'll move on to Britain. What is their situation there in translation? So we'll try to understand it. Now, in Britain, the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century focused on the status of the source text and the form of the target language. You see the status of the source text and how is it, and also at the same time they're also taking a look. They're just taking a look into the target language. So here, language is important. The target language, for example, from English to Bangla, if we try to translate then target language Bangla, that will be our focus. So typical of this is the polemic between Francis Newman and Matthew Arnold over the translation of Homer. Newman emphasized the foreignness of the word by a deliberately archaic translation, and yet saw himself as reaching out to a wide audience. This was violently opposed by Matthew Arnold in his lecture on translating Homer, which advocated a transparent translation method. Importantly, Arnold, whose argument won the day, advises audience to put their faith in his scholars who, he suggests, are the only ones who are qualified to compare the effect of the target text to the source text. You can also find this in Baskin book, such as elitist attitude led to both the, we'll go to the next slide, but here, let me make it clear to you. You can see two different names has been mentioned. One is Francis Newman, a very famous scholar from England, and also Matthew Arnold, a very famous poet. I know all of you have heard of his name. So Matthew Arnold, he also gave some kind of ideas on translation. So and you can see his name of the article is on translating Homer. So these two men, they actually differed, and polemic means they had some kind of argument between Francis Newman and Matthew Arnold. We're talking about the argument that occurred, that happened between these two famous scholars. So Matthew Arnold, he had a different opinion, and Francis Newman, he had a different opinion about translation. But you see, Newman emphasized the foreignness of the work. So far we have discussed, you can see the Friedrichs, one of the hypotheses that was promulgated or promoted by Friedrich. So that is the foreignness or foreignization. So he believes in it, that we have to use that method so that we can have we can reach to a wide audience. But his translation work at that time, actually, it's a work by deliberately archaic translation. Archaic means it's a kind of obsolete translation kind of a style, and people didn't take it, buy it, that kind of theory. But on the other hand, you can see Matthew Arnold, actually, he violently opposed this idea of this foreignness of the work. He didn't like it. So what he did, which advocates a transparent translation method. So he suggested a different method that is transparent, that is word for word or sense-of-sense translation combination. So it will be very clear, crystal clear. The translation will be clear. So importantly, Arnold, whose argument won the day, that means won the day means people actually, most of the people at that time, when actually Matthew Arnold and Francis Newman, they're having polemic or argument on translation, the process of translation. So Matthew Arnold actually, his ideas actually it dominated at that time in England. So that's why he says that his argument won the day. So people bought his idea, Matthew Arnold's idea. So he became popular because of his translation theory. So advises his audience to, but he advised a very good thing, which is very interesting. You find it. He said that the common people or the audience or the readers, they should depend on the scholars. That means scholars who have ideas about translation, the process of translation, ideas of translation. So he said that we should depend on them, not on the common people or the layman about the translation work. So if a layman, actually he or she tries to, or the very common person, common man, a common reader, a common reader without a sufficient knowledge about translation, or maybe he's not well educated. So we shouldn't buy idea from these kind of translators, these kind of readers. We shouldn't buy them. We shouldn't give them more importance. Rather, we should depend on the judgment or the criticisms of the scholars. What do they think about a particular translation? So we should depend on their opinion, not on the opinions given by the layman or layman readers or the common readers. Have you got it? বোঝা গেছে কি পর্যন্ত?
জি স্যার।
তাহলে হচ্ছে যে আমরা আমাদের ট্রান্সলেশনের আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং এর জন্য আমরা নির্ভর করব স্কলারসদের সিদ্ধান্তের উপর, তারা কি বলছেন। সাধারণ লোকরা একটা অনুবাদ করে কি বলছে অনুবাদ করতে যাবে, কারণ তারা ট্রান্সলেশনের ব্যাপারটা হয়তো ওভাবে বোঝেন না। বুঝেছেন?
জি স্যার।
Here he points out that such an elitist attitude led both to the devaluation of translation, because it was felt that a target text would never reach the heights of a source text, and it was always preferred to read the work in the original language. So if you really, follow that idea that we have to depend on the scholars, so it's a kind of elitist approach to the translation work or translation theories. That's only the scholars, they will provide us with the theories. In that case, it says that it will not get a wide audience. It will not reach the audience. That means readership will not be there for that kind of translation. Because if you go for that kind of translation work, that means it will be very difficult to understand for the common readers. So that's why it has a kind of drawbacks. You can see it here. So that's why it says that because it was felt that a target text could never reach the heights of a source text. আমরা যদি এটাতে বিশ্বাস করি, যে শুধুমাত্র স্কলার এটা নিয়ে কথা বলতে পারবেন এরকম বিষয়টা মনে হচ্ছে যে ওই লেখাটা স্কলারলি হচ্ছে। আলটিমেটলি কি হচ্ছে, এটা সোর্স টেক্সটের কাছে যেতে পারছে না, কারণ সাধারণ মানুষ এটাকে বুঝতে পারছে না। এন্ড ইট ওয়াজ অলওয়েজ প্রেফারেবল টু রিড দ্য ওয়ার্ক ইন দ্য অরিজিনাল ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ। এবং তখন মনে হয় যে আসলে অরিজিনাল ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজে শুধু পড়া উচিত, আমাদের অনুবাদ পড়ার কোনো প্রয়োজন নেই, এরকম একটা ফিলিং আসবে বা এরকম একটা আইডিয়া মানুষের মধ্যে আসতে পারে। And to its marginalization, translation were to be reduced for only a select elite. আমরা যদি শুধু বলি যে স্কলাররাই শুধু এটা নিয়ে কাজ করবেন, কথা বলবেন, বা তারা এটাকে ভালো বুঝবেন, তাদের শুধু এখতিয়ার আছে এটা নিয়ে কথা বলা, ওরকম হলে তাহলে তো আমি শুধু এলিটিস্ট অ্যাপ্রোচের মতো কি হচ্ছে, শুধু এলিটরাই করবে, তারাই হচ্ছে এই ট্রান্সলেশনের জন্য দরকার। তাহলে এটা এক ধরনের মার্জিনালাইজেশন, আমি প্রান্তিকীকরণ করে ফেলছি, কোণঠাসা করে ফেলছি। আর আমার যে কমন রিডার্সের সংখ্যা তো অনেক বেশি, স্কলারের সমাজে কতজন আছে, এই কমন রিডারকে আমি কোণঠাসা করে ফেললাম, তাদেরকে আমি মূল্যায়ন করলাম না, শুধুমাত্র এলিট বা স্কলার যারা আছেন আমি শুধু তাদের মূল্যায়ন করছি। সো দ্যাটস নট আ রাইট ওয়ে when actually you think about the translation. So methodology-টা ফলো করে সমস্যাটা আমরা সেক্ষেত্রে শুধুমাত্র স্কলারদের জন্য ট্রান্সলেট করছি, শুধু তারাই বুঝবে, কমন পিপলরা বুঝতে পারবে না, এরকম একটা ব্যাপার এসে দাঁড়ায়। So this attitude may even be said to be prevalent in Britain up to the present day. So he says that still in Britain actually they have this kind of attitude towards translation. For example, pre-university and university students of languages are often dissuaded from turning to translations for help. Very little popular literature is translated into English. Relatively few subtitled foreign films are screened in mainstream channels on the major BBC and ITV television channels in the UK. This is very interesting fact of the translation. I hope you will find it interesting. At least for me, it's very interesting. It says that in Britain, still they have this same approach to translation. That it's very, it must be very, I mean, only the elite people, they will go for the translation, they will understand it. It's not for the common people. So as a result, in English, especially in UK, you'll not find that kind of translation, translated words from German or from French or even from other European languages. They don't have that much translated books available in the market, especially in English. And even in the university level, even in the pre-university means they're talking about the secondary, higher secondary education, they're talking about it. So in the pre-university and in the university students, they're discouraged not to read translation words, especially in English. So they discourage their students not to read the translation words. They encourage them to, if it is possible, read it in the original, but don't go for the English translation. Because sometimes, for example, if any student, if they're reading any, for example, if students on the philosophy department, so if he or she studies philosophy, if in any renowned universities, and if he or she wants to read it in English, the translation, then people, I mean, say that they are discouraged not to read that translation, translated philosophy from German to English. So this is a problem, I mean, in England. And even you can see that in the popular television channels like BBC or ITV, these television channels, you can see rarely actually they screen or they showcase any movies from those countries, for example, German movies or French movies in French language, German movies in German language. So they are not dubbed. Okay? Only you can find the subtitles, but they are not dubbed in English. So they don't want to translate those words or dub those movies in English language. So they discourage this kind of thing. So you see the translation thing, or you see, or the translation work, especially in England, they have a different perspective, they have different scenario existing or prevalent in that society. So it's an interesting translation phenomenon that could be found in England. তোমরা বুঝতে পেরেছো কি বলছি এটা? Okay, let me explain it in Bangla so that you will find it very easy. ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে যে ইংল্যান্ডে ওরা স্কুল কলেজে ওরা ট্রান্সলেশন ওয়ার্কগুলোকে ডিসকারেজ করে, ওরা স্টুডেন্টকে পড়তে নিষেধ করে একরকম। ওরা শুধুমাত্র ইংল্যান্ডে যা কিছু আছে, লিটারেচার আছে, যা আছে ওগুলো অ্যাভেলেবল, সেগুলো তারা পড়ে। এবং তারা এমনকি তাদের চ্যানেলগুলোতেও, বিশেষ করে তাদের প্রমিনেন্ট যে চ্যানেল আছে, আমরা যেগুলোকে বলি মেইনস্ট্রিম চ্যানেলস, স্পেশালি টিভি চ্যানেলস লাইক বিবিসি অ্যান্ড আইটিভি টেলিভিশন চ্যানেলস, তারা সেইখানে যে প্রোগ্রামগুলো যখন দেখায়, সেখানে হয়তো সাবটাইটেল হিসেবে ইংলিশ থাকতে, কিন্তু সেগুলো ঠিক ইংরেজিতে তারা ডাব করে। আমরা কি দেখি যে আমরা অনেক সময় যখন কোনো, তোমরা দেখতে পাবে যে ডিসকভারি চ্যানেল এবং হিস্ট্রি চ্যানেল যেগুলো আছে, ওই চ্যানেলগুলোতে তোমরা দেখবে যে অনেক সময় বাংলাতে কিন্তু অনুষ্ঠানগুলো হচ্ছে, তাই না? ডকুমেন্টারিগুলো বাংলায় হয়, দেখেছো এটা তোমরা খেয়াল করছো?
জি স্যার।
ইংরেজিতে ওগুলো তো অরিজিনালি ইংরেজিতে হয়েছিল, যে ইংরেজিগুলোতে সেখানে বাংলায় হচ্ছে, আমরা কিন্তু বাংলায় শুনতেছি টোটালটাই, নিচে সাবটাইটেল নেই কোনো, বাংলাতে শুনছি। কিন্তু ইংল্যান্ডে ওদের ইউকে তো ওরা এই কাজটা করে না, রেয়ারলি তারা করে কি, জাস্ট যে সাবটাইটেল থাকে, যার ইচ্ছা ইংরেজিতে তারা এরকম ডাবিং করে দিচ্ছে। সো এইটা হচ্ছে তাদের ট্রান্সলেশনের প্রতি তাদের একটা যেটা বললাম যে একটা এলিটস পয়েন্ট অফ ভিউ থেকে তারা চিন্তা করে যে সাধারণ মানুষের এত অনুবাদ দিয়ে কি দরকার, আমাদের তো যথেষ্ট বই পুস্তক আছেই, দরকার কি জার্মান বইটা ইংরেজি থাকতে হবে, তার ইচ্ছে হলে সে জার্মান শিখে পড়ে, বুঝতে পারছো ব্যাপারটা?
Yes, sir.
So that's the idea. I think actually we don't have enough time, so I'd like to conclude our discussion with this thing. Let me see. Look, these are the things, these are given importance, very much importance given on these things. One is accuracy, the correct transfer of information, and evidence of complete comprehension. But when actually you want to assess the criteria for translator and translation, আমরা translation এর assessment criteria কিভাবে ঠিক করব? একজন translator এর কাজটা ভালো হয়েছে, তার ক্রাইটেরিয়াটা কি হবে, মানে parameter, or we can say the yardsticks to judge or evaluate a translation work. So we can focus on these 4 things. One is accuracy, the correct transfer of information and evidence of complete comprehension, the appropriate choice of vocabulary, idiom, terminology, and register, coherence, and organization. And the other one is, the last one is accuracy, technical aspects of punctuation, and etc. So you see, here accuracy is important. Accuracy for information, whether information is transferred appropriately and whether they are comprehensible, if they are understandable, or if the readers, they can apprehend the meaning of the text. So you must be accurate about that thing. It must be very precise. And also the appropriate choice of vocabulary, idiom, terminology. I know vocabulary, understand it. Idiom, I understand it. Terminology, you can understand it. Register is a specific words. For example, for science, especially for doctors, they have some particular words, only they understand it. We don't need to understand them. In English, we have some particular, especially in linguistics, we have some words, specific words for our subject, and we understand it. And when you use it with people from the other department, they will not understand it. For example, CS department, they have their own words. We call them register. We don't understand them. They understand them. So you need to take care of these things. When you translate, you have to choose them wisely, so that your readers, who are very common readers, if they can understand it properly. Okay. And cohesion and coherence and organization. These are the writing strategies that already come to that cohesion and coherence should be there in the word, and also in the especially in the syntax, also for the meaning, semantics. When actually you want to consider them, then you should go for this cohesion, coherence, and organization. That means organization of the sentence, structures, all these things. And also accuracy in technical aspects of punctuation. And you have to use the punctuation marks properly. For example, in German language, there is a note of interrogation, or it's the interrogative sign, but in your language, you didn't use it, you use it something else. So it might confuse the readers. Okay, so if you really want to go for the fidelity of the text, or the allegiance to the original text, then you need to consider about the punctuation. So when actually you want to consider that whether he's a good translator or not, or whether it's a good translation or not, then you must focus on these criteria, these 4 criteria, then you can judge it well. Evaluate the work well, and also you can evaluate the translator at the same time. Okay. All right. So with this note, I'd like to conclude our today's discussion. I hope that you have understood it. Still confusion? You can ask me questions here now, or you can leave your questions on Facebook page, or personally you can text me, you can call me, and obviously I'm going to upload this recording on my YouTube channel, and I'll share the link as well, as I did it before. So, do you have any question? Or anything to add or contribute?
No, sir.
Ritu? Sadia?
No, sir.
So far you have understood, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you need an explanation, I can explain it. So also in our next lecture, you can ask me questions. Okay, not a big deal. So don't worry about it. Okay, if you don't have anything to say or contribute, then in that case, I would like to call it a day. And I would like to thank you all for your active participation. And we'll meet again, inshallah, in another lecture. Thank you. Thanks for your cooperation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Good day to you all.
You too, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.